Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I want to showcase Zygarde in the Open Ultra League. This Pokemon has a great stat product, one of the bulkiest Pokemon in the Ultra League meta. It was already strong before this current season when they buffed Bulldoze as well. Bulldoze now being a cheap ground move, doesn't do a lot of damage, but has a 50% chance to lower your opponent's defense, so it is even better than it was before. If you want to see my battles live, I stream basically every day at twitch.tv/ItsAXN. I'd love to see you there, but let's get into the battles and see what Zygarde can do. Alright, getting right on into game number 1 here. Zygarde up against a Shadow Typhlosion in the lead. One of the best leads I could really dream up of. Electric and Fire type damage are both heavily resisted by our Zygarde here. They end up safe swapping though to a Mandibuzz, a Pokemon we don't have a hard answer to, but we are running Outrage. I've seen some people run Crunch, some people run Earthquake. I think Outrage Bulldoze is a very flexible moveset to have, which is especially going to be helpful in this matchup here where I can go for the Outrage. The Dragon Tail's stripping them down. Outrage probably would get them about half health, and once I get this trip damage off, I can bring in our Tentacruel, overfarm, have energy just in case Typhlosion does come back in, and use our Tentacruel as a way to neutralize this matchup. I have a lot of play against that Typhlosion. I'm not really worried about it specifically. I know that even if they get a big energy lead, Zygarde is so bulky that I can still survive those attacks. In comes another move from Mandibuzz. I can survive 3 Dark Pulses as well. Mandibuzz is very bulky, so is Tentacruel, so these moves are doing almost no damage. I could go for a Blizzard, but at this point, I think a Scald is going to be more than enough. Even if it doesn't knock out, they're going to be in Poison Jab downrange, and I'm pretty sure it should just pick up the knockout. Looks like it does land, and in comes that Shadow Typhlosion once again. They didn't Incinerate before swapping out, so I have to throw this move now, or else they would get a Thunder Punch off into us. I want to make sure I get the shield from this if possible. No debuff on that Scald, but that's perfectly fine. They're overfarming quite a bit with this Typhlosion. They're actually at 4 Incinerates, so back-to-back Thunder Punch. I'm going to no-shield 1, but they are still 1 Incinerate away from reaching a Blast Burn. I'm going to come in with our Zygarde. I know at this point we can sponge all of the energy. We have a shield advantage. There's not a lot of picks in the backline that would really be that tricky to deal with, but I guess that is one of them. Virizion coming in, a Pokemon we don't have a hard answer to once our Tentacruel is gone, but we can absorb the damage here, go for an Outrage, either draw a shield or put them into range where a Hydro Cannon from our Shadow Feraligatr will be able to knock them out. Outrage is coming through. If they choose to shield this up, we can swap out, which is exactly what we're going to do now. Ice Beam should be able to one-shot from this range. After getting a bit of fast food pressure with Dragon Tails and Shadow Claws, Ice Beam will be more than enough to pick up this matchup, and then potentially we'll be able to land a Hydro Cannon against that Typhlosion and take the game here. I'm going to CMP on this attack. I don't want to expend 2 shields if I can help it, because Typhlosion, despite the fact that it does resisted damage, I don't want to risk the fact that maybe a Blast Burn could end up eventually knocking out our Zygarde. I know Thunder Punch did get buffed, but this is Ultra League. I should be able to survive this, even if it's just barely. Go for the next Shadow Claw, reach the Hydro Cannon. I don't even need to use Zygarde to come back in here. Shadow Feraligatr has got this endgame. We can go for this Hydro Cannon, take out the Virizion and the Shadow Typhlosion, and win the match there. GG's to our opponent. Alright, next game, Zygarde up against a Malamar lead. Very neutral lead matchup. Normally in these neutral leads, Zygarde does do fairly well, but Malamar is actually a bit of an interesting case. If they end up shielding my Outrage, it does make it a little bit awkward for us. So I'm going to try to go and get as much damage as I can against them. Tentacruel does like to avoid this, but these foul plays will start adding up, and if they do shield my Outrage here, they will be able to get to 3 moves before I can get to my next Bulldoze. Outrage will be thrown. Does it get shielded? It does, unfortunately. So now Malamar will actually have a decent matchup here, but I am doing a lot of damage just with Dragon Tails, putting this into a range where our Tentacruel or our Shadow Feraligatr could potentially deal with this later on. Foul play number 2 coming through. They're at their next one right now. They can knock out our Zygarde. I don't really like shielding our Zygarde if I can help it. I know that it's so bulky that investing shields in it, especially early on, could be a bit of a misplay, especially when I have Shadow Feraligatr in the back that also likes to use shields. Unfortunately, in comes a Licky here, a Pokemon that I really don't want to see. Licky able to have potentially Earthquake, and it resists our Shadow Claw damage on our Shadow Feraligatr here. So this is not looking great right now. I'm going to no-shield, just hoping right now that they go for a Body Slam. If this is like a Solar Beam, an Earthquake, whatever it is, I would hope that it's not going to one-shot us. Luckily, it is just a Body Slam. You make the right call. Next Hydro Cannon going to come through and put this thing closer to farm down range for our Tentacruel. I end up catching a move, probably going to be another Body Slam here, and now I should be able to Poison Jab this down, potentially be able to win this game if they don't have a strong backline matchup into our Tentacruel. Unfortunately for us, though, it looks like it is a Miltank in the back, double rollout users, 2 Pokemon that I really don't have a ton of play with once my Zygarde is gone. Zygarde has a good matchup into the rollout users. Well, actually, Miltank maybe not as much just because it has Ice Beam, but Zygarde does resist rock type damage. We are going to see what moveset this thing has. Ends up going for a Thunderbolt. That is going to do a lot of damage. We did get the Scald debuff, so we're not going to get quite one-shot there or put into fast food farm down range. I'm thinking right now another Thunderbolt would knock us out. I have to start shielding up something this game. This one will be shielded, and now we do have a Scald, but there is still that Malamar in the backline. There is still a Licky as well. This is going to be a very close endgame. Scald is going to come through, does get the knockout. Malamar is still very healthy at this point. I'm going to go for the Scald. I'm hoping right now for maybe a no-shield at this point. Maybe if they no-shield, I can just fast move down their Licky Licky. I do see that they do that. In comes their Licky Licky. I have a Hydro Cannon, but I know they outpace me to the next Body Slam. My only hope is that I can Poison Jab down this Licky Licky before they're going to be able to get to a move. I'm going to get as much fast move pressure as I can there, not even throwing the Hydro Cannon. In comes our Tentacruel. If I can shield this up and they don't knock me out in one rollout, or get a Body Slam after that one rollout, it can be a Simul KO. It's going to be oh so close. Unfortunately, they do reach that Body Slam at the last second. Could have been a Simul if they didn't have the energy, but our opponent playing very well. Good energy management by them. Licky Licky able to finish off the game for them. All right, next game, Zygarde in the lead up against a Miltank. We were just talking about the rollout users. This thing, if it has Ice Beam, which it always seems to have the moveset you don't want it to have, it will probably do a lot of damage to us. I know they've sometimes been running double nukes as well, so like Ice Beam and Thunderbolt, but I have seen a couple running Body Slam too, so it's always just a bit of a toss-up. What is this cow going to throw against us? Of course, if they're staying in the lead, probably means it has Ice Beam, but we are still so bulky that despite the fact that it is a 4-time super effective move, we are able to absorb it, go for this Outrage, and potentially put them into range where it's a lot more manageable for our backline. At this point, they are staying in this lead. I'm thinking Zygarde could potentially still have play in the backline. I know they have Ice Beam, but this is still a pretty bad lead matchup for this cow, so I'm going to go for this Bulldoze now, try to make sure I can knock them out, and maybe keep some health on our Zygarde just in case we need it later on. Bulldoze actually ends up getting shielded, so at this point, I'm going to make a catch. I know they've been throwing these Ice Beams. I'm going to catch it here on our Shadow Feraligatr. This is basically Shadow Claw downrange, so we save a lot of health and a bit of energy on our Zygarde. We end up baiting out a Clefable as well, which isn't really the thing I was trying to bait out, but I think we're in a decent spot here where we can outpace, get to these Hydro Cannons potentially, and it won't knock them out in one hit, but look at how much damage it is going to end up doing. I'm going to shield, hoping that they don't bait us with a Swift or a Meteor Mash potentially. They do go straight for the Moonblast. That is fantastic news. A lot of energy down the drain for them, and as you can see, my Switch Clock is coming back up here. I think the best play is going to be to throw this right before they're at the Moonblast, try to swap out, catch the Moonblast on our Tentacruel, which is exactly what we are able to do. Moonblast's going to do a lot less damage here to our Tentacruel than it would otherwise to our Gator, and as long as it doesn't debuff, which it doesn't, we might be in a good position, but no, in the backline, a Gastrodon, this is not looking great. With that said, I can see potential play this game. Tentacruel, even though it is weak to ground-type damage, is still doing a lot of damage itself with these Scalds. They're going to have to throw energy to knock us out before we get that next Scald off, which they are now forced to throw either a Body Slam or an Earth Power, probably just a Body Slam, but even with that said, we can't quite get that move, but maybe there's a chance I can reach an attack with our Shadow Feraligatr. If they have Earth Power right now, they could win the game on the spot throwing it, but they only throw Body Slam. Maybe they're running Water Pulse, or maybe they just didn't have the energy just yet. Hydro Cannon going to come through, get the knockout, or potentially... it does get a knockout against that Gastrodon. It was going to be kind of close. In comes that Miltank. I can get some fast move damage with our Zygarde, and we barely are able to reach this Bulldoze before a Swift is reached from this Clefable. Now we can knock out the Fairy type with our Dragon type and go for the fast move down against the cow. GG's for our opponent. Very close game. Oh, did I see that right? Yakai, the current world champion. This is going to be a tricky game. They have a Weezing lead against us. This is not looking great. I'm going to go with our Shadow Feraligatr save swap, try to flip switch advantage if I can, and see if there's going to be any play for us right now. Yakai is ending up to throw a Brutal Swing before swapping out into a Dark-type Pokemon, Galarian Moltres. We do have a lot of energy here, so I think I can get potentially a shield advantage from him, but this could be tricky if his backline matchup is going to be something that has play into Tentacruel. At this point, I would have to assume there's going to be something like maybe a Gastrodon in the backline, at least something in the back that's going to have a lot of play into our Tentacruel, because it's been kind of weak to it so far with that Weezing lead, and honestly, Moltres is not the best answer into it. We have shield advantage rather, we give him a full farm down, which is not good. They are going to have 2 Brave Birds to throw against our Zygarde, which is going to do a lot of damage, despite the fact that Zygarde is so bulky. I think after 2 full Brave Birds, we're basically going to get knocked out just by fast move pressure. We do take the first pretty easily. The second is what comes down to almost knocking us out. And the final Pokemon, unfortunately, is an Annihilate. The thing is, this matchup doesn't really have to be, a hard win for him. All he needs to do is trip us down. And at this point, he's got the win, right? He's going to be able to start spamming out these Rage Fists. If I can get a debuff with Scald, maybe there's a chance. But at this point, they're going to be able to survive a Scald. I would need 2 to knock him out. And by the time I take out this Annihilate, I know the Brutal Swing spam will be enough to win in the game. So GG's to the current world champ, Yakai. Great battles as always. Alright, next game up against another Weezing lead. Let's see if we can overcome this. We couldn't last time against the current world champion, so maybe there's a chance here that we can overcome it this time, but it seems like they're playing it out exactly the same way. Going for the Brutal Swing, potentially swapping out after this, or maybe they're going to stay in this time. I'd like to see this. They are staying in, which is going to be a little bit more helpful. I can either get a lot of chip or a shield advantage here, which it looks like shield advantage is what I'm going to be able to get this game. They don't build up to a play rough. I can just no-shield this next Brutal Swing. I survive it pretty easily, and now I can probably get to another Hydro Cannon. They end up catching on a Zygarde, it looks like, a Pokemon that I'm using myself here. I wish I went for the Ice Beam, but a good catch by them. I can swap out in just a second, overfarm with Argator until I can swap out, and maybe I can get to a Hydro later on with Feraligatr, but either way, we're going to be in a decent position here. I go for the Outrage. I lose CMP, which is actually crazy. I have a 15 attack Zygarde. I was not expecting to lose that CMP. Fortunately, we no-shield, and it's just an Earthquake. It's not going to be an Outrage, but I really wish I would have just shielded, farmed down, and used this energy for the backline. I fully undercharged the Outrage to try to get a little bit of energy. Maybe I can still get to the Bulldoze against that Weezing when it comes back in, and we do just barely before the Fairy Wind down is able to happen against us. This Bulldoze is going to come through. Surely it's going to do massive damage. Barely even tickles it. Bulldoze is still not a strong move. It does have a 50% chance to debuff, though, which is why it is so good. If I get a debuff, it makes it so my Dragon Tails do so much more damage. Luckily, though, Tentacruel in the backline looks like it's a bit of a core breaker right now. That Weezing did end up going for an Overheat. It does do more raw damage than a Brutal Swing would have done. I'm going to start shielding up these Hydro Cannons, though. A Hydro Cannon is going to do more damage than a Brutal Swing would do from that Weezing, so I want to make sure that I'm not taking too much unnecessary damage here. We don't get a debuff, but we do draw that first shield from this Shadow Feraligatr. I guess the second one, right? There's no shields left over for our opponent. We do have a shield left, but this is going to be a very awkward matchup. I end up saving my shield there. I go for the Blizzard. I know it does more raw damage than a Scald. Scald might not knock out. I think Blizzard will. It does end up landing. It takes out that Feraligatr. In comes the Weezing, and I have to hope that the energy lead that I have on Gator will be just enough to reach a move before the Fairy Wind down happens. Looks like I am barely able to reach this Hydro Cannon, taking the win against this Weezing team. I don't know how we did it, but luckily overcoming one of the worst leads our Zygarde could see. All right, next matchup. Looks like we have the Mirror lead. Very good lead matchup here, obviously, for us. As long as it stays away from our backline, we're going to be in a good position. These Dragon Tails doing a lot of damage back and forth. And if they win CMP against us, that's a little awkward because they can get shield advantage. Dude, how am I losing CMP? I literally have, I don't really care about doxing my Ultra League IVs as much as I do my Great League. I think it's like a 15, 11, 12 or something. It's very attack weighted. I'm really surprised I'm losing these CMPs here, but this Outrage is going to come through. It does a lot of damage to them, and in the backline, a Say Swap of a Shadow Drapion. I don't have a great answer to this, but I didn't take too much damage on Zygarde. I think I can survive a move here, potentially land the Bulldoze against this Shadow Drapion, and maybe put it into a range where our Tentacruel can deal with it a little bit easier. I know that a lot of the time Zygarde is going to be paired with a Water type. I'm pairing it with two myself, so I would expect either a Tentacruel in the back or maybe a Shadow Feraligatr of their own. With that in mind, I want to make sure I can take out this Drapion before they do too much damage to us here. Crunch does quite a bit, but I know I can reach my Scald before they can reach another one. If they want to shield a low HP Drapion, they can be my guest, and if they no-shield it, I'll have a lot more fast food pressure potentially in the backline for whatever they have as their final Pokemon. There it is, another Water type on the screen. That Shadow Feraligatr is going to be a bit of a scary Pokemon to see because they do have shield advantage, but I think I can survive this move, get off a Scald as long as they don't catch it, and I should be in a good spot as long as I avoid catches the rest of this game. Scald is going to come through, has a chance at a debuff. 1 in 3 chance, basically. Do I get it? No, I don't, but I don't think we quite need it at this point. We've chipped them down with their Poison Jabs into a range where our Shadow Claws will put them into Hydro Cannon range, and I know I'm in range where they need to land 2 Hydro Cannons against us. Just always watch for the catch. I was going to make sure that I overfarm to 2 Hydro Cannons our opponent tries to catch. It's a very hard catch for them to make, unfortunately for them. I do overfarm, farm down their Zygarde, and I have all of these Hydro Cannons loaded for this Feraligatr when it comes back in. Now I can go for the farm down. We shouldn't even get knocked out by this move, and I think we might be able to take the game against the opposing Zygarde lead. Yep, GG's to our opponent. I don't know how we're losing CMP in these matchups, but I guess our Zygarde is not as attack-weighted as some people's are. Alright, next game, terrible lead. One of the worst-case scenarios here, the Shadow Alolan Sandslash. It's also running Shadow Claw, which is interesting. It's a lot worse for, honestly, our whole team. I guess Powder Stone would do more damage to Zygarde, but it's already got a really good matchup there. But Shadow Claw, making it so we're not resisting the fast moves here, we are going to end up shielding. They are staying in for a second, so there's a good chance they're weak to Feraligatr in the backline, and since our Feraligatr is our best Pokemon, I want to keep it alive and make sure that I'm not going to be able to be in a position where potentially just like let it go down. I don't have any energy on it. They try to come in with their Tentacruel now. AVA weak to Mud Slap in Ultra League is kind of wild to me. If they let us, I'm going to store all of this energy, catch the move on Tentacruel, and now we have 2 Hydro Cannons loaded in the backline, potentially that I can use against that Alolan Sandslash later on this game. They are going to throw these Scalds. Obviously, they're resisted damage, but the Poison Jabs and Scalds are going to add up over time, and if they start getting debuffs, it can make it a little bit more uncomfortable for us to take them out. Scald does come through, ends up not debuffing us here this time, and now I can try to go for the Scald at the last second, but I always want to have energy, because if I throw a move, they're going to be able to swap out to their A-Slash, and if I let that happen, then they're going to be able to just kind of knock out our Tentacruel before getting any energy off. So I basically want to have back-to-back moves before throwing the Scald. We do throw the Scald, not quite enough to knock out there. Final Pokemon going to be revealed, the Shadow Drifblim. I think if we had Crunch, it would be a little bit of a better matchup, but we have Outrage, and all we really need to do is draw a shield. I know I survive an Icy Wind at this point. I can go for the Outrage in just a second, guarantee that I can get the knockout against this, or a shield from this Drifblim. They end up not throwing another move just yet. They have an Icy Wind loaded, but if they let this go, I can Shadow Claw down. If they shield it, I have those Hydro Cannons. They end up letting it go. This is perfect Shadow Claw farm down range, and this endgame is going to be a little bit tricky. Alolan Sandslash does have a catch available to it right now. If they bring it in, I need to make sure that they don't catch the move. I do throw the first Hydro Cannon. I need to watch for the catch, or if they let this go, just fast move all the way down. They actually do let the move go, which is kind of surprising to me. I thought they were going to shield that, try to catch the next one, but it looks like our opponent at this point doesn't have much of a way to wiggle their way out of this matchup. They're going to come back in with that Tentacruel. I have a move here. I have a move on my own Tentacruel, and we can win this game using all of this Water-type pressure that we had in the backline. Tricky lead. We got a little bit lucky they didn't have a hard answer for a Shadow Gator, but I guess they probably should just come in with that Tentacruel into our Gator instantly. GG's to them nonetheless. Next game, what is this? A Bellibolt in the lead? I guess that's a great matchup for Zygarde, though, right? Because Zygarde does resist electric heavily, about as heavily as you can resist it, being a ground and dragon type Pokemon, and Bellibolt has no coverage moves whatsoever. We see that the Primeape is the safe swap here this game. While Tentacruel is a good answer, it's not going to be the hardest answer in the game, so I know that if I go for a Bulldoze, chip them down into a much more manageable farm down range for Tentacruel, this is going to be a really good matchup. I can take this next move, even if they get to a third, and even if that third is a close combat, I know I still survive it, just because of how bulky Tentacruel is. But if they do go for a close combat, I don't think I'll get to a Blizzard against that Bellibolt when it comes back in. They do throw the big move. We survive on 1 HP, which is honestly probably better for me, because that means this Bellibolt is going to get so much less energy. Went for the Scald, trying to get the chip damage that we can here, and in the backline, going to be that Shadow Gliscor. Okay, I think at this point, this game is over for our opponent. We have our Feraligatr that we can line up into this. Even if they can catch a move later on, I think I'm fine with that, because I'll farm down their Bellibolt with our Zygarde. I'll have an Outrage loaded against this thing later on, so it doesn't even matter if they go for a catch. I'm going to shield. Their win condition right now is landing an Earthquake, and I don't let it happen. Earthquake is going to be thrown by them. Good attempt, but I have this Hydro Cannon ready to go. It will get the knockout if it goes unshielded. Let's see what they do. They do end up shielding it. I can reach the next one, but they do have their switch clock up. Do they catch? No, they do not. I get the next Hydro Cannon off. This will knock out the Gliscor, and at this point, Zygarde is going to be so happy to see that Electric type in the backline. Our opponent at this point realizing not much their poor Electric type Pokemon can do there in that matchup. All right, next game, Moltres in the lead. This is one of those matchups where having Outrage is just so helpful. If I had Crunch and Bulldoze, or maybe Earthquake, I would have no charge move pressure here whatsoever, but by having Outrage, not only do I have a lot of fast move pressure, but this move is going to put them extremely low. Our backline doesn't really have a great answer to this, so neutralizing a Moltres here in the lead is going to be very, very good for us. They end up no-shielding and then throwing a move, almost certainly going to be a Brave Bird, but I don't want to shield this. Zygarde is not a Pokemon I really like shielding too much. We end up letting it go. It does a lot of damage, but I think we're still outside of range where even an Ancient Power would knock us out, and even an Ancient Power plus a Sucker Punch, so we should just be able to win the Zero Shield matchup despite taking a Brave Bird. They do a lot of damage to us, though. They almost actually do end up winning the Zeros, which is kind of sad. In comes a Virizion in the backline. We have a Bulldoze ready to go. This is going to do almost no damage, but I can potentially get a defense drop. Does it? No. Unfortunately, no defense drop, but we have switch advantage, which is all we really need. We can go for our Tentacruel against this. Hopefully, our Shadow Feraligatr is going to have play against the final Pokemon, and this should be a good game as long as it's not a terrible matchup, and it's a Shadow Swampert in the backline. They actually end up going straight for the Hydro Cannon here. Maybe they know something I don't, but I don't think they can go for a Hydro Cannon and Mudshot us all the way down. It does do a decent chunk of damage to us, but these Mudshots are just not quite adding up as much as they probably would want them to. If it did a little bit more damage, like if it had Shadow Claw like we did, maybe they could farm us down. Unfortunately for them, though, I'm pretty sure Feraligatr should be able to reach these 3 Hydro Cannons in the Ultra League. They are always going to try to catch the third. I'm totally fine with that. If they catch the third, then I'm still going to be able to win this game because I can farm down with Tentacruel, go for the Scald against this Swampert when it comes back in. There's really nothing they can do, even if they do try to make the optimal play. They are going to throw another move. I have to double shield, so I guess I'll give Swampert that. They are taking my shields here, but I know the catch is happening. I even was calling it out live when it was happening. They're going to catch this. I don't care, though, because I can come in Tentacruel now, farm this down, have enough energy that I can come out of this matchup with a Scald, or at least as much energy as I can to get to that Scald against this Swampert, and once we're able to knock out this Virizion, the game should basically be over. I will have to throw a Scald here. A Leaf Blade would come pretty close to knocking us out, but that Swampert is basically energy dry at this point. We can go for 3 more Poison Jabs, get the Scald off, and knock out the Swampert when it comes back in, and now that should be GG's. Our Poison type taking out the Ground type, and honestly, Zygarde winning a switch advantage this game was kind of huge, and now, look at that, Tentacruel just so good here in the back line. Alright, next game, Zygarde up against Shadow Magnezone, another pretty spicy Pokemon here, another Pokemon I'm very happy to see with our Ground-type user, and a Moltres Safe Swap once again. Alright, so the thing is, I don't have an answer to Moltres Safe Swap, but I also don't really want to waste my Zygarde here, so I think the play is go for an Outrage, get the Dragon Tail damage, and then try to sponge the energy on Tentacruel. If they end up going for the Brave Bird, you know, so be it. It will do a lot of damage, but it debuffs their defense stat pretty early on, and I know I survive it. Let's see what move they end up throwing here. It is going to be a Brave Bird, but we survived that pretty easily, and now our Poison Jabs are adding up a little bit quicker than their Sucker Punches are. Now they're obviously going to be throwing the Ancient Power, but that's fine. I can shield this up. Oh no, they actually go for the Brave Bird once again. I guess that's even better, because at this point, I just go for the full Poison Jab down. I have 2 Scalds almost ready to go. If I survive this Volt Switch, I can get both moves off. And if I don't survive this, you know, it's still fine. I have Zygarde for this thing. Let's see what happens. Scald does end up coming through. We survive it. In comes a Drifblim, and now I see a very, very easy win condition. All I have to do is align my Feraligatr against this thing. I'll have my Ground type for their Electric type, and they see it as well. GG's to our opponent. Alright, next game, Zygarde up against, well, that's bad, Clefable, one of the worst seeds we could really see here. I'm going to Safe Swap to our Shadow Gator, hope that we can make something happen, but in the backline, going to be a Licky, one of the hardest answers to our Shadow Gator that we could possibly have seen. This thing, even if it doesn't have Solar Beam, it can just go straight Body Slam, and it spams them out so quickly, and they survive 2 Hydro Cannons to the point that I know they're going to always be able to win Switch advantage here without me getting any sort of shield advantage. Body Slam number 1 comes through. I survived the next one, but I know they're going to outpace to that 3rd Body Slam before my 3rd Hydro Cannon, so this matchup is not looking amazing for us right now, unless our Tentacruel does have some bit of play in the backline. I throw on alignment here, hoping that our opponent tries to throw on good timing. Unfortunately, they did end up CMPing us, which is the worst case scenario, because now my next Hydro Cannon, despite having it, will never be able to be thrown. I'm going to just no-shield this, try to farm down with Zygarde. Maybe there's a play I can make with our Tentacruel in the backline. If it's like a Feraligatr or something, you know, I'm just hoping that we have some sort of wiggle room here. They do go for another move. Is it going to be Body Slam, or do they reach a bigger attack here? Going to just be a Body Slam. Doesn't do too much. We have a full Bulldoze coming out of this, but we know that Bulldoze is not the strongest move in the game. We're going to try to swap out to our Tentacruel, and in the backline, a Gastrodon. Okay, yeah, no, that was about as bad of a team comp for us as we possibly could have seen. Alright, next game, Mandibuzz. In the lead, we have Outrage, we have Dragon Tail, and we get to avoid this with our Shadow Feraligatr. So what I can do is just stay in here, absorb all of the charge move pressure. They have almost no fast move pressure against us. Mandibuzz is very bulky, but Zygarde is bulkier. We can no-shield this Dark Pulse, does almost nothing to us, and now reach the Outrage here in just a second. Outrage might be a bit of a surprise for this opponent. I know a lot of people do run moves like the Earthquake, like the Crunch moveset, that wouldn't have any sort of coverage for flyers, but in this situation, having Outrage is so critical. I do end up no-shielding this Dark Pulse. It does a decent chunk of damage at this point. The next one won't knock us out, but if they can reach that plus an Aerial Ace, they could potentially knock us out with 2 more charge moves. So I'm going to no-shield this one, but I want to throw before they can knock us out with that next charge attack. We have the Outrage loaded right now. Throw it on CMP, make sure they can't knock us out before we draw a shield from them. If they want to shield this, that would be a big mistake, honestly, in my opinion. They do just let it go, and now in comes their next Pokemon to farm us down. I could go for the Bulldoze, but honestly, I might as well just go for the raw damage of Outrage. Outrage does do a ton more damage than Bulldoze, even though Bulldoze would be super effective, and now that we've got that chip damage into it, we can come in with our Tentacruel and hopefully just absorb all of their energy. I saved a bit of our Zygarde at this point. I know that Zygarde could potentially be used as a catch, and since they are coming in with Tentacruel against it, it's just kind of weird, right? Like, what do they have in the backline that they are so much more scared of our Zygarde against that than against their Tentacruel? Scald is going to come through, does a decent chunk of damage, puts them into Poison Jab downrange, and now another charge move from this Tentacruel is going to come out against us. What is their final Pokemon? I'm very curious at this point. What is it going to be? They do get the debuff on us, but I think at this point I do survive the next Scald here if they want to throw it, and I'd rather just go for the full-on Poison Jab down, have this energy to potentially debuff the final Pokemon, and see what's going to happen. They go for an Acid Spray, actually, against us here. Unfortunately, it looks like our opponent didn't have much play in the back. They just end up top lefting. Our next game, Gastrodon in the lead. This is exactly where we want to see it. Gastrodon is a very, very annoying Pokemon for Tentacruel. Feraligatr has play into it, but honestly, this is our best matchup, so happy to see it here. We are going to take an Earth Power. We do take one pretty easily, but the next one will knock us out, so I think Gastrodon does actually end up winning the Zero Shield matchup, because they can survive the Outrage themselves. This one will come through. Does it get shielded? It likely just goes themselves non-shielded by this Gastrodon. Yeah, it looks like they're just fine at this point, taking the Zero Shield matchup and using this Gastrodon as a way to set up their backline. I'm going to shield farm down. I don't really like going down shields using Zygarde, but at this point, I know I have so much energy that potentially an Outrage could get a shield back, and I have a decent chunk of health on ourselves as well. They end up coming in with a Zygarde of their own. We have Outrage ready to go. I don't want to stay in this match because I'm a huge farm down when I have two Pokemon in the backline that could just one-shot with an Ice-type move. In the backline for them, though, a Miltank. Okay, another one of these cows. I don't like this. This is a bit awkward. They could have Thunderbolt. They could have Ice Beam. I guess Ice Beam would be, better if it's like Ice Beam bodies them. That could potentially be good. But they built up quite a bit of energy here. I think that's going to be a Thunderbolt at this point. And if it is, it's going to do a lot of damage. Not quite one-shot us, but put us into a range where we are so incredibly low. This is going to be an awkward endgame. Hydro Cannon is going to come through, doesn't quite get the knockout here. Miltank not as bulky as Licky, but still bulky enough to survive that move. And the thing is, I can come in Zygarde here, but I could see a very annoying situation in the backline. I have to Poison Jab down this Miltank, which at this point I should be able to. Okay, looks like they are running double nukes, so they're not going to reach a Body Slam or anything against our Tentacruel, but this is going to be a very bait-reliant matchup here. They didn't build up too much energy. I'm almost certain this is just going to be a Bulldoze. I can no-shield. It doesn't do too much damage to us, but it can get a defense debuff, which it does end up getting. I have to make a 50-50 call. Do I bait or do I full send right now? I'm just going to send it and hope that it goes unshielded. Do they shield this move? They do, unfortunately, which means that unless I can outpace them to this next charge move, I'm not going to be able to win this game. Bulldoze does come through. This time, no debuff. That's good. Maybe I don't get fast move down, but I think at the last second, they're going to reach the Bulldoze right before our next Blizzard. One Poison Jab away from winning this one, but, well played by them. The Zygarde in the backline, a little bit too much to overcome that Miltank as well. Super, super annoying pick. All right, Zygarde up against the non-Shadow Feraligatr. Actually, a little bit trickier probably than the Shadow. A lot harder just to fast move my way through this matchup, and I'd probably have to land an Outrage if I want to do any sort of substantial damage. They do have potentially Ice Beam here. I want to shield this up. I don't want to take an Ice Beam from this thing. It wouldn't one-shot us, but it would do quite a bit of damage, and I know I can probably catch a move on my own Feraligatr, maybe on my Tentacruel later on this game. I don't want to take it here, so we're going to go for this Outrage, see what they're going to do. Ends up being a no-shield on that attack, and I'm going to swap to our Feraligatr, catch the Ice Beam, and now this Gator has been basically neutralized. We have two full health Pokemon. We are down shield, down switch advantage, but we're basically doing a 3v2 right now. This is going to be a bit of an uncomfortable backline. They have a Registeel. Since I'm down shields right now, this could be bad if they want to start shielding, but if they let this go and let the next one go, I might be in a good spot. The thing about Registeel is even though it's very bulky, the debuff chance on Zap Cannon is now only 1 in 3 rather than 2 in 3, so it's a lot more likely that I can shield this up, not get punished for it, and I think I'm going to be in a decent spot right now. Hydro Cannon will do a lot of damage here. It might not knock them out, but it will put them into range where I can farm them down with our backline. Next Hydro Cannon will be reached against Registeel. If they want to shield this, they can, but I'm just going to try to catch the move on our Zygarde. If they no-shield, it's going to literally be a 3-on-1 now. Going to be a Clefable in the backline. We have the Tentacruel to come in and sponge all of that damage. GG's to our opponent. Zygarde, very bulky Pokemon as we've been seeing today. One of the bulkiest Pokemon in the Ultra League. But honestly, it is a little bit underwhelming at times. Its damage output is definitely a little lower than you'd want it to be, although, for a good reason. It's so bulky, it shouldn't have a lot of damage, but it's a little clunky, a little less on that offensive side than you would expect a lot of dragons to be. But with its sheer bulk, with its new addition of that Bulldoze to debuff defense stats quite often, it's actually a very strong pick. Alright, well, thank you so much for watching today's video. I shoot my battles basically every day live at twitch.tv/ItsAXN. I'd love to see you there. I also am going to upload a lot more to the channel, so if you want to see more videos like this, please make sure to subscribe. Thank you again for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.